that?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Perfect. So I'll just share my slides here. I didn't hear anything from students. How's everybody doing in exam period probably? Okay. Hopefully you guys are ready to roll on the exam.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
That's
sir.
Yes,
great.
sir.
That's awesome.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Good to hear some fresh voices there. Okay. Let me know when if you are able to see the screen.
Yes, sir. Screen is visible.
Okay. Uh, I need to switch. Okay, the full screen, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I just have to switch between two screens here. I think the topic that we wanted to cover was the innovation process. We talked briefly earlier, uh, and other guest lecturers or the folks have covered a lot of things with innovation. And At this time, I think my focus would be only on the specific to the innovation process rather than other things. So I'm assuming all the topics were covered to the syllabus. Is there anything, Pooja Madam, you want to say what was covered and what can be the emphasis for rest of the content that I want to cover today? Probably at this time, my focus is to cover innovation process and all the aspects that we had covered last time. But we had covered a lot more last time on the top of innovation process. So, any thoughts on that? If there is any focus that you have for covering the content that we need to cover in this class?
Sir, actually, yeah, the basics of innovation, like difference between innovation, creativity, and all, that has been already taught to the students. It has been covered. Then Yogendra sir has given some inputs again related to basics of innovation, and
Okay.
Pranil he has covered about like stage gate theory and
Okay.
one thing IPR.
Mhm. Thank
So,
you.
innovation process steps are remaining,
Okay.
and then the tools like management tools like NPVA, KPI, and all those things are remaining.
Okay. Yeah, the NPV, the KPI, probably we'll see if we can breeze through it, but let's see what we can cover in 1.5 hours. Um,
Okay.
so I was curious, when is the actual exam? Uh, is it like,
Exam will start
yeah?
on Saturday,
Oh, okay.
21st.
Yeah, that's nice. uh, Great. So let's start with this. I would like to start with at least one question. Maybe I'll keep the questions fewer, but let's keep this interactive to an extent. Who can tell me how if the innovation process is something that has a start or end, or is it a continuous process? What uh, is it a process itself? Uh, can somebody just chime in and say what is innovation, and do you think it has a start or end to it? Anybody?
It has a particular start, but it's a continuous process.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Uh, yes, sir. Innovation is continuous process. Means every time the new concept or new ideas are added, it's a continuous process, sir.
Perfect. Great. Great start with the the feedback or the response to the question. Innovation process, right? I mean, it has certain start as the first student mentioned. Definitely because when you start thinking about something, uh, it starts with collection of some ideas, and there is a definitive start in any innovation process. But typically, once it's started, it's a continuous process because I think it'll be quite apparent when I give some examples how the innovation process has worked for some of the things that we have known for years and years. So innovation process definitely has a start at some point where it gets initiated, but it is a continuous process. The things keep on evolving, and the ideas get pumped in, and I think the innovation process continues to evolve with the idea that gets generated and gets added to the original idea as it started. So innovation process, just to kind of give a map of the process. You start with an idea, right? Then there is a concept attached to an idea. Then what we call is a business case, and I will speak a little more to it as we go on. Uh, but the business case is the step where the idea is converted into something meaningful to make me more purposeful for the business, because ideas can be ideas on the paper without getting realized into an actual product or any actual meaningful thing. But the business case makes it more meaningful by putting some content to it, by putting some resources to it, because you need to give some justification to get that idea into practice. When the business case is put on, it follows the development as in the converting that actual idea into something more practical by physically putting efforts into, by using resources or any material or development that need to happen. The process continues with validation. Validation is the step where actually the development that went in gets specific meaning by putting some constraint into it, by by putting some boundaries into it, confirming that the idea meets certain requirement. And the launch is where the validated idea, which is with the boundaries and the development that happen, gets put onto the market or put up with the customers to face and use it. So I think this is the high level idea about how the innovation process, right? Now the circle here is not mainly completed. That doesn't mean the process is not continuous, right? It is a one cycle or one iteration, one flow of the process from idea to launch. But if you think about it, the last piece missing is the arrow that continues from launch back to the idea, and the circle continues as a loop. So this is a continuous process in a sense when you think about it, because an idea, when I will give some example down the road in the class, you will get a clear understanding why the idea, when it's meaningful, doesn't stop evolving over period, and it is a continuous process as more of novel things get added to it and it makes more purposeful. Any questions so far on this high level process? All good, pretty straightforward. I think when you hear
Yes.
the terms like business case, validation, launch, you may be curious, what is this business case? What happens into it? Because this is a big deal when it comes to uh, justifying something. There are a lot of resources and that a lot of efforts put on to screen out the ideas to make it into business case and really take it as R&D project. Not every idea gets put on for development. There is a huge amount of effort that goes in to put the resources behind it, and for that reason businesses put a lot of time to screen out the ideas. There could be hundreds of thousands of ideas, but only few will make it through, because those are the ones that will strive for the business case and it makes it meaningful for the development. Any thoughts, any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, good. I'll keep on cruising. So again, I think Pooja madam mentioned that somebody may have covered the stage gate process, uh, but I think I will reiterate this thing because this is part of the innovation process. I mean, I think this is how innovation process is defined in many organizations. Uh, you may hear the terms like stage gate, phase gate, tool gates. These are just the interchangeable terms for a process that follows certain gates between each steps as the process evolves. And what that means is the gate will only open if the stakeholders, stakeholder meaning the people uh, who are really relevant uh, or connected with this process, approve of the completion of that step. So, for example, in the innovation process, when there is a first step where ideas or concepts are generated initially just for ideation phase, uh, there is a gate at the end of that process or at the end of the period where stakeholders review what has been done in order to move into the business case phase where it is really thought through to make sure the things like the practicality of the idea are relevant there. The questions like how big of a this thing is, how difficult it is to make something, how real it is, what are the risks are the questions asked, and a business leader kind of review all those questions to uh, see how it has been justified by the R&D teams or the teams that are putting this idea forward, and then that is screened further for development. So, as I mentioned, this is a gated process, and every stage has the stakeholders involved for the final approval to move into next phases. Otherwise, the phase stays in the same order or same situation until all the stakeholders agree to it and it's ready to move on to the next step. Now, that doesn't mean the agreement has to come all on board, and the program may stay stagnant as in doesn't move when there is no progress. I think the relevant decisions will be taken to make sure the the innovation process continues, right? Because businesses are about timeline. There are things attached to the overall process, meaning launches are planned for certain product, and uh, everything moves in timeline. But the process has gates, as I mentioned, and there are times such that the everything is scheduled, and there is a big team. For example, in my organization, there is a big PMO, uh, project management organization that handles different programs, and they oversee the timelines and the projects for each of the stages, and they push it through for each of the tasks that need to be completed in time so that all the schedules are managed within the scheduled timeline. Uh, when it comes to the development, you may have heard about the pilot studies, lab studies, the actual work that need to happen, prototyping. And I think we have, I have a detailed slide as we go through this one for each of the steps, but if you understand, development is where the actual work happens. Uh, it follows with the validation. As I said, there are lots of activities that happen after the development is done. And when I said development is where prototypes are done and some sort of definition is put on the idea in a physical form, where the teams kind of test it out and confirm that what the idea was put forth is practical in a sense that it can be made valid by actual physical form. The validation process kind of puts more definition to how it is made, meaning there are specifications that will come in place if certain things are made, how close they are to the actual product that need to be made, the specifications that will come in place, the repeatability of process, meaning how the manufacturing processes can make it repeatable. So every time the product is made, it is made the same way as it was planned, and all those studies happen and all those efforts happen in the validation phase where the business gets confidence that yes, this is manufacturable, and this is something that we can assure our customers on a on a long-term basis without any variation or without unexpected variation from what they expect. The final thing is launch. Launch is where the products faces the end customers or end users. It is the activities with marketing, if you would imagine, where there are lots of front-facing activities, reaching out to the field as in the folks who actually use this product, talking and explaining what are these products, how they are used, and how they can be used to their best potential, things like that. Okay, so stage gate, phase gate, toll gate process. Each of the phases has a significant amount of stakeholders. If you imagine in idea or concept phase, there will be a lot of R&D folks that will be involved who are like researchers who work on the ideas, but also it has other stakeholders like marketing folks because they are the ones who know uh, and who can pitch in some thoughts to these researchers what the market needs. And I think I will talk a little more on down the road on this slide as well, how that happens. Okay, so I'll keep an eye on my clock. Ideation. So diving deep into this process, right? Ideation. It's the first step, or in a way, where the things start, right? What is ideation? Just to keep a quick
Excuse me, sir.
feedback from. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question
Yeah.
about last slide. So what is that preceding? Is it about the fundings or creating capital for a business or anything else?
Preceding here, I think when you are working on a validation process where you are looking for manufacturability, there is a term called design for manufacturing. Uh, Design for manufacturing may bring in a lot of more details or definition to the product, and it may feed into some more things that can generate additional concepts or products, and that can be termed as preceding sometimes, but it is a broader term in terms of validation if you think about it, but it largely connects with the design for manufacturing aspects and what goes into making the development into a practical solution and sustainable solution. Sustainable, by that I mean, uh, what is that we can, our business can give a confidence uh, of making consistently on the long run. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so ideation. Anybody can anybody want to chime in and say what is this ideation about, and anything that you feel you understand about ideation? What is ideation?
New concepts, creating
Okay.
new concepts.
Where we generate new ideas, where we form some ideas.
Okay. Great. So here's a picture of something that you may be familiar, largely towards the rightmost side of the picture, right? Leftmost side probably is very old. I think perhaps none of us were existing. Uh, so ideation is something that starts with getting the job done, right? If somebody thinks about getting a job done, they act upon it and they think about something. And that's where ideation starts, meaning it doesn't have to have a formal start if you think about it. Um, you know, in the ancient ages, if you may imagine, and anthropology or social sciences, whoever has at least studied in the primary education knows the humankind Mankind started with some, cave times, and they needed to get their teeth cleaned, right? Teeth cleaning was something that was a job needed to be done, and it was done by the means that the folks at the time came up with. And you can imagine what different forms of these brushes have taken over period doing the same job, right? And each of the forms that have been evolved have gone through some sort of ideation in a way to get the job done. But you will also appreciate what this job done meaning, job getting job done means really, because in fact this is just teeth cleaning, right? Why would the product take a different form from the leftmost picture to the rightmost picture? What is this job to be done is the real question when you think about ideation. And I think that's what you want to keep in mind when you think about ideation process. What is the job to be done? Because we would have been satisfied with the leftmost brush, and perhaps probably at this time we may be going back on doing those things as well. But we still have all these ranges of things that have evolved from the original job that need to be done, cleaning the tooth or cleaning the teeth that we have, right? So, um, job to be done. Customer buy a product or service to get a job done. And that's what is the main idea of ideation and defining that. So, in ideation process, if you think about it, it's about identifying what that job is uh, and what we call as unmet needs. Unmet needs as in, if I go back to that example of the brush, what were the existing solution and what people maybe or anybody may be looking at that is missing from that particular product. So if there was this existing brush that did not have bristles that will move and that needs a lot of hard work, there could be some unmet need that there could be some possible people who may be lazy or who may be really disabled in a way that it will perhaps will be helpful to have some movement in the bristles that will make their job easy and make them independent. And that triggers the idea of getting the motorized or vibrating bristles for the brush. So the job getting the job done has a meaning, and that's the identification that happens in ideation process where you really find out what is that we need to have or we need to get done by creating this new idea. So unmet need identification is a big deal when it comes to keeping the innovation engine going on, if you think about it, because you we could have or humankind would have stopped if everybody had thought like the first brush that any caveman has invented or used would be the only final brush that everybody ever use. Uh, so everything has a meaning, right? Unmet needs, identification of what the job need to be done continues the innovation cycle going on or continues the innovation engine going on. The step three, or within this ideation process, tied with the unmet need, the businesses identify the hidden value. If you imagine what is the value of motorizing or creating vibrating bristles for the brush, and that itself opens up a huge like avenues of a population that may get benefited. As I mentioned, some disabled population, may that be 10% of the overall population that is looking or that may be benefited by having something that will ease up their job of daily life, once, twice, however many times they brush the teeth easier and they make them healthy. That brings up a huge potential for that idea as well. So identifying the hidden value kind of a big gives a big boost, as in how much effort need to be put on to create that idea, how effective that idea need to be. So so it gives a very good input for the next step where the business case is made, right? And then you think about solutions to close the gap, meaning unmet needs, what the job need to be done, and the hidden value for what is not in that product triggers the solution to close the gap. So that's the overall ideation process. Again, and the steps. If you think about the big items that are thought when the businesses think about creating a new idea or creating the next big thing for their business. Okay. So jumping on to unmet needs, I mentioned about the job to be done is, the first step, which is very clear to you guys. Now, what is this unmet need thing? Unmet need thing is an identification of the larger need that the customer base may have that will or that can be the next big thing for any businesses, right? In a way, benefiting the business, but in a way benefiting the customers as well, because unmet needs are the needs that are not served at this time, meaning the larger population or larger customer base is looking for those solutions that are not there. So it's a kind of a mutual thing, if you would imagine that need to be identified. What is missing out there, and what can benefit the businesses to grow and keep the innovation going on. So in unmet needs has a lot of aspects, right? The marketing teams, and there are huge amount of resources that are put in to do this groundwork. So you think about industry trends, where the industry largely going. In my industry, medical devices that I work in, it's very specialized one, very niche. There are big players like huge $1 billion companies that work in. Uh, there are trends in where the technology is going, where the things are going, how it is evolving, uh, and identifying those industry trends is part of finding unmet needs as well, because industry trends follow what customer has been or what the end user has been benefiting with. And so it's kind of mutual thing that you identify the trend, you see where inclination is, how the industry is moving. Competitive analysis. Competitive analysis is not like snooping or spying on the competition, but really finding what the competition has been doing well, and what has been benefiting the competition, so the businesses can evolve from where they stand and understand how they can really do better job with finding this next big thing, as I mentioned. Data mining. Data mining, when you think about understanding what is happening in the marketplace, apart from industry trend, you think about the specific efforts to find the trends in the data that you collect in the field. And you think about how the company has been selling their product, how the trend is with the purchases or the usage of the product that company has developed. Then you think about interviewing the customers, interviewing for the end users, how they feel about their product, what are the things that may be missing. So there are like direct one-on-one interviews, the industry interviews, the expert interviews in the field that happens to understand the unmet needs as well. Ethnographic research. Uh, there are ethnicity related uh, uh, trends or aspects of each of the product that you think about. For example, ethnicity is the culture has a lot of effect on what we do as a humankind, right? Irrespective of any industry, uh, the way people have shaped their lives comes from their culture, their ethnicity, and things like that. So may that be even their health, because if I think again related to my field in medical device, when we work on heart valve, there are specific trends certain ethnicities or certain cultural background have based upon their lifestyle, their eating style, how the disease states. Some of the ethnicities or some of the cultures have a direct impact from those lifestyles and how the disease evolves. So there is a understanding about where the demographics or where the unmet needs may be focused or concentrated. Quantitative research, again, a lot of things you see uh, with the businesses are triggered by the data, the facts, and quantitative research helps in understanding those facts, right? A lot of the times, these interviews, industry trends can be possibly very qualitative in a sense. There are no meaningful numbers to it, but quantitative research like data mining, that's kind of goes parallel with it, uh, gives certain factual information to understand the unmet needs. Lastly is voice of customer. Voice of customer again, I mentioned about interviews, but voice of customer goes from specifically targeted customers or consumers of the product. Uh, if I give again another example coming from my field, uh, the the heart valves that we develop, they are consumed by the physicians, not the patient. I mean, the patient are ultimate receiver. That is obviously the final customer for us. But physicians who actually implant those heart valves into the patients are the people who know what works best, and what is missing from that. So there's a lot of valuable information that comes from from the customer itself. And physicians, the surgeons who do these therapies or the implantation are very key. And they are not the only people who does this thing. There are many other associated functions that carries out these surgeries, and those help in defining these unmet needs, or at least identifying those unmet needs. A time check, 5:40. How's everybody doing? So far, so good. Is it digestible, what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Awesome. So continuation of the ideation process, right? The actual process happens with brainstorming. You may have heard brainstorming. There's a lot of brainstorming that happens for creating ideas, because you can imagine two heads are better than one head. You talk about something and you try to define what the job need to be done, and you talk more about it to see what is possible. So brainstorming is where you're challenged to think about certain things and just openly talk about what are the possibilities, and make those possibilities into really a list of things that can be done in order to achieve that goal, the job to be done. So brainstorming is a very critical process in ideation, where the teams kind of huddle together. And when I mention teams, teams can be all multifaceted teams. They can be variety of different skills and backgrounds that that may come in picture to give the idea, because brainstorming can be only effective when you think through holistically, rather than just think in a one way, where some of the engineers will sit in and think about how the job to be done. So you may have seen some funny pictures. I should have pulled in something from internet, but I didn't have a chance. But you may have seen how a specific category or specific uh, type of people like engineers may think in order to get the job done. There are plenty of pictures floating on the internet, right? If you were to ask an engineer to design something, how would he design? If you ask a doctor to design something, how would they design? And you think about the outcomes, and they're interesting, right? How some specific professions or specific skill sets think. So brainstorming is actually a multifaceted team thinking, where people just come in, they're challenged to think about something, and ideas are collected, and then there is a process of vetting it out and funneling it into final set of ideas to take it further. There is a prior art search in the ideation, meaning you may have heard a lot about IP, the intellectual property from Pranil, I think. Uh, and prior art search relates to IP, right? When you are thinking about an idea, uh, it's very likely that somebody may have done it in the past. Or it may be very new. So with the technology now, it's way easier compared to the past, where you can just go, search in the Google patents or in the patent database, what has been done, what has been captured and claimed as a intellectual property. So prior art search gives an idea about if the idea has been already been thought about and what has been claimed and what has been mentioned as a part of their intellectual property. That gives a lot of triggers. So after brainstorming or within this phase, there's a lot of search on this thing. We have a huge team of legal counselors or legal attorneys to work on the IP, intellectual property, because in medical device their stakes are very huge when it comes to human life, and the obviously the rewards are high too, because when you are actually working with medical devices, the equipments are costly, the products are very costly. It's not about the product, it's the whole process of getting the solution for saving somebody's life. So big companies definitely try to protect their intellectual property, and they are filed in the form of patents, right? So everything is captured, or they try to capture as much as they can for the intellectual property. So prior art search helps us to understand what has been done and what are the areas that may not have been captured and that may come as a competitive advantage for the businesses as well. Open innovation. You may have heard this term. Anybody knows what is open innovation? By anyways, any thoughts on that? Or vertical integration? Anything or both of those things? Can anybody say what you guys know about open innovation? Anybody? All right. On count of 3, 2, 1, I'll go with it. Open innovation. Uh, I think when it's a traditional approach to have the R&D teams work on ideation and create a product, right? It's internal. Open innovation kind of opens the business for outsiders influence, meaning the ideas can be generated in-house, but they are let go outside, because if it is not effective, if input from outside firms or institution can help get that idea better. Okay, many of the times the ideas or the um, innovations are kept inside as a traditional approach, which is called vertical integration, where from idea to making the product is done internally, all of it. But open innovation approach brings it external by inviting the external ideas as well. Some of the bigger companies who are uh, in less, I would say, or less risky or less at stakes for opening certain aspects of their business, um, use this particular tool or approach of innovating. For example, I have known certain company, or on the previous company I worked for called Velcro. The Velcro is Velcro with a hook and loop fastener. They had opened a part of the innovation team where they will reach out externally to the general public to invite ideas for their current current issues on using certain hook and loop product that company has invented. So the external folks will submit their ideas and they will be rewarded for their ideas if those ideas are chosen for innovating a new product or inventing another product. In a way, it's a voice of customer, but it has a specific approach of triggering the response from the customer by giving more references to what is the product, what is missing. So open innovation has both things, letting the internal ideas to go outside for for feedback, or asking the input from outside to develop a new product. So it kind of opens a big avenues for innovation rather than going vertically integrated where you just work with limited amount of people. Um, so if you think about open innovation, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding are the best examples of open innovation. You may have known, like you folks are pretty advanced in the technology, I imagine, even compared to our times here. So you may be aware already the crowdfunding, crowdsourcing thing. People will pitch in their ideas on the internet, and those globally, people from all across the places from the world will look at those ideas. If they are compelling, they will pitch their money in, right? So that's open innovation in a way. Somebody is going out there, and putting out what they are trying to do and asking for more support, more funding input, and getting that idea through. So that's open innovation. Uh, any other thoughts, any other things on the same line of crowdfunding, crowdsourcing that I mentioned that is more relevant? You may have heard, right?
Like sir, Shark
Yes.
Tank show, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Shark Tank show, right? Again, somebody's pitching the idea in there, asking for funding in there. Um, it may uh, it may be opening those gates for additional support consultation from the sharks for that business idea that makes even the idea better, right? Yeah, because somebody is opening the gates for their innovation process to get better. So great example. Thank you for bringing that up. I think Shark Tank is getting much popular in India as well. Uh, Hopefully, one of you or more than one of you guys can pitch in some ideas. It's a great platform. Um, the fun fact about this one is my company has a Shark Tank themed competition or a large scale, uh, I would say, event. I won a Shark Tank pitch last year for one of the concepts that I propose in my organization. So thanks for that relevant comment. It's again is a avenue to bring up your thoughts, and it's reviewed by sharks, and they fund the program or they fund the idea, and they consult for making that idea better. So good luck with whoever thinks on that line, and keep on innovating. So the next thing is the 3M 15% rule. I think it's a reference that we wanted to highlight. We're innovative companies. 3M is one of the most innovative companies. It has been awarded for innovation, its innovative approach multiple times. So it's a role model for a lot of companies in the industry or in the US or globally. What they do differently. So they have a simple thing. Again, I mean, more complex things are associated with the overall being successful part of it. But a big thing that stands out is their 15% rule. The company has 50% of the time for the employees allocated for doing their work of their own choice, where people have no bounds to spend time on whatever they think and create something new of their own, and that triggers or that opens up a big chunk of time in their regular busy schedules to really not think about the actual mundane work that they do and think innovatively. And 3M has been successful utilizing that particular policy, or not policy, but approach, triggering new ideas. And it has been very successful. And uh, as I said, it's as simple as saying that it's give the employees time, additional time, like 15% time to bring their own idea or innovate on their own. But there are more things that will go in picture. But at high level, if you think about it, that is the philosophy. You let people think independently outside of their regular busy lifestyle and have them do what interests them most. And that triggers a lot of value. Inspiration from nature. Nature is the biggest teacher. If you would, imagine, and you may have heard this one, right? Nature has a lot of things to learn from, and I think the humankind has evolved from nature. So when you think about ideation, there are a lot of inspiration that can be taken from what happens in nature. Uh, just to give an example, the company that I work for has been built on, a fact that nature has and was seen by the inventor, right? So in 1960s, when the inventor of this particular concept, um, Velcro is something that is hook and loop fastener. It has a hook part of it and is a loop part of it that engages and that joins the two things, right? Or the joins the fastener. And imagine or not, it has 40,000 plus different type of variations or different type of products that Velcro makes today. It has been generated from the fact that there is something called cockleburr. I don't know the name. Probably you may relate to, but you can see from picture. The cockleburr is something that has spikes or hooks on it. If under microscope, it has uh, certain kind of shape that this hook resembles, and it can it can attract or it can get attached to any surface that can tie the hook to it. So the inventor went on to a walk in the evening for um, just for a stroll, and he had this cockleburrs stuck to his coat or jacket. And when he saw through the microscope what made those cockleburr to stick, he found out there is a unique structure to those cockleburr hooks, and that made it to stick with the textile or the cloth that he was wearing. And that started the whole idea of how this can be used to join or attach two things. And attaching two things is the job getting done, and it has been many variations of getting that job done. So as I said, 40,000 plus SKUs or different product variation is a huge thing, right? Close to $1 billion or so company. It's a huge. So the ideation process can start with some inspiration from nature. Uh, Another example for the company that I currently work for. This is the first ever heart valve that was developed by the engineer who who was a prolific innovator, meaning he had 60 some years of innovation experience. When he retired, uh, he wanted to do something, and he had a lot of hydraulics background, engineering background, and he thought the human heart can be mechanized because right now it's all dependent on the body, and there are lots of patients or people who suffer from something that's caused by the age, because he was aging too, and he has somebody in family who had the background of that thing. So he came up with this simple idea of creating a valve, but because he pitched the idea of mechanizing the heart to a doctor, and the doctor, but after assessing, felt like instead of mechanizing the heart, which is too complex, why not mechanize the valve? Valves are part of the critical components or functionality of the heart that makes the heart function well. So it was as simple as this steel ball inside a metal cage, uh, and this triggered the idea for getting the heart function when the biological heart or the native or the natural heart valve stops functioning. And so it's very weird if you see something with a metal cage and metal ball is put inside the heart, and that function as a valve, meaning it stops and lets the blood go in uh, when it's needed as a valve. So this was not an inspiration from nature, but it was just part of an example for ideation. how certain ideas get triggered, because an engineer who had a background in certain field, but he wasn't able to do something meaningful until he started talking with the doctor and make it meaningful by saying this is the most impactful thing that can be done. So from 1952 or 50s, when this first heart valve was developed, in 2000, this is the heart valve that is being currently in the fields. Obviously, there are next generation heart valves that are being worked upon way beyond this. But this heart valve is, you may have heard about open surgery, open heart surgery. The older heart valves were implanted by cutting open the chest of person, and it is very traumatic or excuse me, or a invasive procedure where the recovery times are months and months, and you don't get to the fullest recovery in the old age. So this innovative approach from this steel ball heart valve to a transcatheter type of implantation, where a tube is inserted in the femoral artery, as in the artery in the leg, with a small incision, a small hole, and the tube delivers this particular heart valve to the location it is supposed to be. So the recovery times are from months and months to only weeks, and no hospitalization more than a couple of days. And that's huge deal for the patients that are aged 80 plus or very old, that cannot function, uh, as a normal person at that age with such a critical heart condition. So I think the relevance to the ideation process is getting job done is the same, but the form it has taken based upon what are the unmet needs, how it can be done better, has taken a form from this to this, where at this time nobody might have imagined way back in times this can be done in such a novel way or a different way that will make or that will transform the lives of the patients or the people who suffer from the heart disease. Okay. Any thoughts so far? How's it going so far? Is it making sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Great. Okay, I'll continue cruising. So innovation management, a part of this stage gate process, right? I mentioned about how how it is managed. It is seen as a gated process, and gate is where there is a gatekeeper in form of the product, the project management office or the PMO, that monitors the timeline and keeps all the different teams that are working on the development in check, because there are different functions that will come in play. For example, in my current organization, there are R&D teams, there are manufacturing team, there are marketing team, there's regulatory, there is a clinical. All these teams have their own specific goals for the product, and they are tied together as a project through the PMO, where there are lots of tasks are defined, and each of the stage gate process has the deliverables against those goals from each of the teams. So the innovation management definitely is is done through each of the phases by having this review, what we call a design review at the end of each stage before it moves on to next step. So there'll be a ideation or concept review of step, where it will be the criteria to move on to the next level. There'll be a design review in the business case. There'll be a design freeze review in the development stage, and there'll be a manufacturing design review in the validation phase, something like that. Okay, so each of those have a specific gate where it is reviewed as a larger team, and uh, risks are identified, and the outcomes or the deliverables are reviewed to make sure everything is in in line with the expectation and in time. Okay, so from the unmet needs to revision process to business case, I will jump into the purpose. I mean, directly into the topics that we're talking. Um, Business case, what is the need? What is the reason why it is done, right? Businesses need to make the assessment of what has been proposed as an idea. There need to be rationale as far as making something practical, making sure the businesses are putting the dollars into the right things, because ultimately you don't want to do everything, and you don't want to attach something just on an emotional basis. They have to make sense, like 360 degrees, meaning all the way around as a wholesome case. So there are questions asked as far as justification, why we want to do this thing, why not we want to do something else rather than what you are talking about or what you are proposing. What is the strategic fit, meaning as an organization, a lot of the organization has a direction, they have vision, they are they bound by those visions. Big organization, for example, they are very clear what they want to do. um, my organization has a very clear vision that is focused on the patients, the unmet needs, and that strategic vision aligns with how they want to do certain innovation projects. So it is a guiding principle for many cases as well. How you make a business case when you put an idea, how does it fit with the strategic goal? Then ultimately, certainly the return on investment. When something is put on, there need to be an assessment when you put in business case, what kind of value you will get back on the idea that you put in. There is a risk assessment as far as this idea can lead into certain challenges, right? What are the risks? And not only thinking about risk, what are the countermeasures? What are the mitigations? What are the solutions for reducing or nullifying those risks is the part of the risk assessment. Uh, and it kind of gives a wholesome picture of all those things together in the business case when you think about what is the real deal, why the business want to take this idea forward into the process. So lastly, again, the resource planning that comes in picture. Who are the people who need to go in? What is the amount of dollar? RACI, if you may have heard in the project management or some other, is the allocation, is identifying the resources and the associated responsibilities. It's a kind of responsibility matrix. So each of the function is identified for what are they responsible for. So it's very clear idea about who does what rather than there is a conflict. So it's a part of project management where you identify, matrix with people involved and the items that are the action items that are involved in conducting certain research. So that's the business case. As a part of business case, there's a project charter as well. Project charter is like a like a one-page contract. Um, it it um, it triggers the initiator of the idea or the leader of the idea to put a form to their idea. This is a high-level document where the leaders or the people who are pitching for the project put together all the details of the project in a very effective manner in a small document. It's not a large document that keeps on talking about how this certain things can be done, but it captures the big picture. Who are the people who will lead the program or the development? Who will be the owners, managers, stakeholders, meaning who has interest into this project, who will be affected by the project, the timeline, what are the problems that we are trying to solve here, what is the evidence. And believe it or not, this is a very small document, even though it captures very high impact items. This is a 1 page or 2 page document that typically businesses adopt, and It depends on different businesses, what kind of format they follow, but it largely captures all these items where uh, the business leader can look at that particular charter and give a green signal or red signal to assess the next steps. Okay, so moving from the business case project charter to development, and I could say this is the part where you actually do the work. So think about the business leader have given green signal to the business case and the project charter, and the project is real deal now. This is the time now to start working on telling what the idea can do in its physical form or how it can take a physical form. So in earlier cases, you saw in business case, the things are already defined. Who's going to work on it? Who will be involved? What is the dollar amount and things like that. So development is actual things where things take shape with the people that are involved, with the dollars involved, with all the scope that is put on in the business case. So concept development and technology development. If you think about development, the idea can take its form as a concept, but associated technology or the process that makes that idea go into concept, right? So development has two aspects: concept development and technology aspects or technology development. You may have heard about prototyping, right? Rapid prototyping. Rapid prototyping is something that you adopt as a proxy process. Proxy as in, instead of using a final manufacturing process, you find a alias or a parallel process in order to convert certain idea into reality quickly so that you can test it out, you can show and tell to your stakeholders how this idea looks like. So different prototyping techniques can be used, right? Rapid prototyping, if you think about, or if I have to give an example, what we do for rapid prototyping, we, being a textile engineer, doing the textile still in medical device, which is very special because it is rather unique and specific to the industry, how it's get used. We have very customized sample equipments that we use to generate the prototype. We have these equipment do the job that the production scale machines can do, but only with a fraction of time, with a fraction of dollar amount attached to it. We use different techniques like 3D printing and things like that. You may have heard additive manufacturing processes like 3D printing, right? 3D printing can be a tool to create certain ideas um, just to kind of prove it out, the concept or initial assessment of the concept rather than making with the manufacturing process. There are high-tech techniques with, joining the things, ultrasonic welding and ultrasonic um, joining techniques, may that be laser joining techniques, and it allows the researchers to take the idea from their paper onto a physical form to kind of explain what it is like to to actually get that idea converted into a final concept. And during that process, you kind of the researchers kind of get the idea how this particular product takes a form, and there are more definitions put on, meaning the specifications are put on. And while doing this one, also it is identified that the development or the idea may see certain challenges making into physical form, right? So there is identification of potential issues in making those products in the R&D phase, or even anticipating what may go wrong in scale up. In the development, since you're getting the physical product or concept made, there's this feedback loop as well, show and tell, as I mentioned, that happens when you get a feedback from the stakeholders looking at what has been made in that development phase, and then assessing based upon the development all the related aspects with respect to finances, meaning how expensive it is to make something, if something is made in a way that is appropriate for all legal needs the business has, regulatory needs, especially for the sensitive businesses like medical devices. There are a lot of regulatory challenges or regulatory requirements that goes in, and those are identified and kept relevant in the development phase. And when this development happens in a rapid prototyping manner on in a R&D lab or so, there's always a consideration of how this particular development can be taken to the next level by identifying technology partners who can scale it up. May that be internal, may that be external, but there is always this aspect of design for manufacturing, where you think about whatever you're doing, if it is manufactured. Any questions so far? How you guys are tracking me so far? Is it still good? Everybody is still well tuned to the talk.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Awesome, awesome, good. So I think I have 15 more minutes. Sorry, I had to keep track on this morning. Uh, so continuation of development. The the concept may take a physical form, but there needs an assessment of technical feasibility, as in you test it out, particularly for how competitive this product is for the technical requirements that it has. So large scale feasibility assessment that goes in, we call like feasibility development in, past the initial prototyping. So first step is prototyping, just to give a physical form to the idea. And there is this feasibility stage where you really test it out before you push it to the next level. You kind of understand all aspects of that product development, where you see if the product that you made at a prototype stage, whether it meets the technical performance criteria to an extent, whether there is a feasibility with the technology that is available to make this product. If this this technology that we are planning to make is competitive in market, or somebody else has a more competitive technology that gives the other competition or the competition an edge over what we do. Okay. Through the development is the validation as the next step. Validation is where there is a lot of feedback, rinse and repeat, as we call. Beta version, you may have heard in the software terms, beta version. If you call it, we don't, I mean, in my industry, we don't call it, but many industries, if you generalize the term, beta version is something that is not the final commercial version that goes to the customer, but it is a test version that almost is a final version, but not commercialized, put onto the shelves on the stores to get to be picked up by the customers. So marketing gets in actually play for this one. There's a lot of feedback that goes back and forth for improvement, and that is planned around what is the job that we thought needed to be done, and how the customers think now that it is doing against that job that we thought it should do. So feedback loop that may happen depending upon the industry. This phase can be pretty lengthy, or can take different forms. But at a larger scale, there is a big component of feedback. But along with that, there are many activities that go along with it, and that can be summed as making sure everything is right. So from the development stage, if you think about it, then the step in validation is making sure the scale up, or the conversion of the the development idea is repeatable. The technology that we adopt for scale up is capable of doing what we did in the development stage. In the validation, it's also seen as how feasible it is with respect to different specs and different specifications and the price point, because something at R&D may cost thousands and thousands of dollars, but that's not what should convert into manufacturing process, because that's how the businesses can put the prices for the material or for the product, and make it more competitive or compelling or more practical to the customers. This is the phase as well. The design is frozen. By design frozen concept, I mean the the specifications are locked in, the processes are locked in, the form of the material is locked in, the form of the concept is locked in. So all the stakeholders kind of agree that this is the final form with everything, the pricing and whatever that is, um, that we set up is locked in. Nothing freeze is like nothing moves from what has been documented. So validation process is uh, validation process follows the design freeze after all these analyses are done. And certainly it follows this assessment where the actuals are collected, where you know what are the yields of the process, what is the time to make something, how the performance is, and how the cost looks like. Okay, so continuing on validation, lastly, it is testing in the field, right? Earlier in the development, there was this testing and evaluation and feasibility. In validation, you test in the field. In my case, in my current industry, there will be some clinical trials that will happen before it goes commercial. The heart valve that we make uh, that goes to the actual patients in the field, as in there could be some clinical trials where the business or the physicians reach out to the potential patients asking whether they would like to enroll into clinical trial. This is like early stage testing of the product, not that it is tested the first time on them, but it has been rigorously tested on animals before it gets tested on human. But the actual test would be still in the pre-commercial environment, not that it is readily available to the market and anybody can pick up, but it is more so on a limited scale that that the trials happen, and those trials also collect a lot of information to feed into building all the data that we need to support for the product when it goes to commercial. Um, and lastly, again, verifying the economical viability of the technology, making sure it is very competitive for future, and also it is sustainable, right, with the validation. And when you think about proof of commercial feasibility, uh, after the validation is done with the initial trials in the field, it is kind of a pre-commercial testing, you would say, that will feed into the commercial activities. There are a lot of things that will happen in commercialization. Uh, Again, based upon industry, there are other functions like regulatory, clinical that will come in picture in, as it is in medical device, which will support the next step. The next step when you are going from validation to the launch. Launch is where you, after the pre-commercial testing is done, you let the world know that we have a product, we have something that the market or the customers needed to get the job done as they define. And here we think we got that right. So the businesses tell what they got in very different manner, in very different outlets. Those could be those could be defined by the go-to-market strategy. The marketing teams define what is the go-to-market strategy for this particular product. So they will say, you know what, we are going to announce this into this premium trade show or premium event that we have. For example, Apple does it at their dedicated technology event that they have. They don't go to any event or any trade show that is a common, like, general occurrence where there are a lot of other companies. They do their own thing. They announce they have a technology, whatever that day is, and that is always a fixed thing, and it has worked for them. How successful they are. People look forward for those, right? When is the event for launching the next Apple product? So there are different go-to-market strategy based upon the industry and based upon the product. Marketing collateral is part of this thing where you have a lot of involvement from marketing team reaching out to the customer base and finding out how you communicate in the physical form on, may that be, the pamphlets reaching out, talking to the customers, or going through different outlets like digital communication, social media, trade shows, door to door, as in customer to customer, in field service, like in field sales, is another thing that still exists. You may imagine for a medical device like ours, uh, there are lots of folks on the field, the salespeople who reach out, work with the physicians, explain what the product is, and help uh, through the way of having that product used or tried by the physicians. And that is door to door. It's not necessarily, door to door to the end customers or so, but the consumers of the product. So consumers and customers are two different things, right? Uh, and in the launch as well, there could be some activities to clarify if whatever, if the older versions of your products are obsoleted, meaning if you're decommissioning your earlier versions of the ideas or concept that you have. If it replaces the old ones and it's just definitely something that need to be taken out, that is the activity that happens in launch as well. It clarifies, hey, we had this Apple 14, 13, whatever that is currently. Now we have a Apple 15, and these are the things that are coming in, would be the pitch from Apple, right? So yeah, or they may say now no longer support to iPhone 7 or 8, wherever they has been decommissioning right now. Will clarify what support they will provide to the older versions in light of the new product that is getting launched. So that's the launch activity. And I think I did pretty well. 5 minutes to spare for our talk. I hope I was able to cover the innovation process well in the time that I have. I hope I was not too fast. Uh, and hopefully you guys have been able to absorb what I've been throwing at you. So uh, any questions, any thoughts? I would like to hear from you. I've been talking a lot. Let me take a breath, but I would like to hear from you, Pooja Madam, you as well, or anybody who's attending from faculty.
Actually, Ashish sir, he couldn't attend to this session because
No problem.
some of the family function he's
Yeah,
having.
no problem. Yeah.
So it was quite good, informative session. From student side, do you have any questions? From student side, hello,
Can anybody hear? Is everybody
Sakshi?
still here?
Yeah, yeah. Of course. Yes, Sakshi. Sakshi, yes. Hello, Sakshi.
Sakshi is trying to speak probably, but I cannot hear.
Right.
Yeah, Arvind and I used to pick on people and try to make people talk about it, but I've been trying to refrain from it now in the interest of time now. But as a typical thing, we could have pushed you guys to talk a little more. I hope again, I hope the concepts have been clearer than before to you guys, and I was able to give you a reasonable idea about innovation process. And believe it or not, this is what the
Yes.
process we follow in industry. It may take different forms based upon where you end up working, but at larger scale, that is the thing. This is how it is followed in the R&D. and it is true to the point that we have mentioned, rather than taking it from just like academic reference or something from books. So it is real deal when it happens from start to end, and the emphasis in R&D, as I said, is in early stages where ideation, business case, and development that happens, where there is a lot of efforts and hundreds and thousands of dollars that are put in to make sure uh, the research is done that is meaningful, to get the job done.
Just to share, as I said, Pranil had a session on stage gate theory and business plan.
Yeah.
He had given assignment to the students and regarding one page business plan.
Okay.
So all the groups, they presented very nicely with new ideas they came out with, and it was like a really good session, interactive
Nice.
session with Pranil. Yeah.
Excellent. So was it, let me ask you this then. If it was covered to an extent, was it a repetitive session, or this was addition to what has been covered already?
Uh, it's sort of addition to that particular
Okay.
session, sir.
I'm glad, because earlier that's how I thought you mentioned that some part of it is covered, but I didn't want to make it repetitive for sure. But given the context where folks have exam on Saturday and the time crunch we had, um, I thought like we will give our flavor of what we go through here, and
Yes.
give in
Yes.
detail. Yeah. Um, any other questions? I think I'm done from my side on this one, but are there any areas, Pooja madam, that you think can be covered? I know you mentioned about NPV, and
Yes. Yes. Those
all those things.
management tools, people management, organization, those things are remaining actually from syllabus.
Yeah. Probably, I think this is like little more so a specific concept or so that those can be elaborated. I will be able to share the slides that we had. Probably those can be, as explanatory as they can be from looking at some concept and reading it through. Uh, but I think it definitely needs a little more immersive discussion on that if we are to conduct, rather than just breezing it through, because that would be as good as reading the slides, right?
Yes, sir, yes,
Yeah.
that's true. Actually, sir, we
So,
have recordings of last year's also.
okay.
So we have planned to share those recordings to students, last year's
Yeah,
recordings.
yeah, I think that is a great one. Then that will work better than just running it quickly, because the recordings may give it the flavor that I think Arvind had last time. That will be a good one. Sounds good. So,
Yes.
yeah, I think I am at the time, but I hope everybody has a good exam and wish you best. Hopefully, you got something out of this class from our talk. Unfortunately, as I said, we were not able to give enough time this time, but I'm sure Pranil and other folks have given good amount of blast of information to you folks. So good luck to everybody. All the best. And I hope
Thank you,
everything
sir.
was well. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir.
Take care, guys. Have a good one. Bye now.
Yeah. Bye.